Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Paulie Bear Michael, or PBM, whatever you want to call me. Today we're just going to try to quickly go through patch 4.9 patch notes. Actually, a pretty big patch, so I say we're going to go through it quickly, and this is going to be a 20-minute video, just my guess. But anyways, first up, New God Daji. She is a melee ranged, or like melee auto attack based assassin. I think she's auto attack based, but I don't think anyone really knows yet. She's new, so you don't know how to build her. Anyways, her passive, Torture Blades, she basically applies a bleed anytime she auto-attacks enemies. This is minions and gods, blah, blah, blah. They take this bleed effect and take damage every 1 second for 2 seconds, so it lasts for 2 seconds. It'll tick twice, and it can stack up infinitely, so if you keep auto-attacking, you'll keep refreshing the duration, you'll keep applying more bleeds to them. Horrible Burns, Daji heats up her claws, causing her next successful hit basic attack to, that's weirdly worded, to burn the target, dealing instant bonus damage and additional damage every 1 second for 3 seconds. So this is just a single auto attack steroid that'll deal bonus damage for 1 auto attack. This has pretty good synergy with her 3 that we'll go on to later. Excuse me. Her 2 is 1000 cuts. Daji lashes out with her claws at nearby enemies, executing 4 strikes over 2 seconds that hit all enemies in range. These hits apply her passive, so the Torture Blades bleed. While this ability is channeling, Daji gains increased movement speed, immunity to slows, and her tail mitigates damage dealt to her by enemies who are behind her. So, to give you a visual of this, it's kind of like the way she strikes or whatever, and the movement speed she gains is similar to Isis's Wing Gust, her 1, and she gets immunity to slows during this. Isis is like immune to knockups and knockbacks or whatever, or just knockups, I think. And then the kind of range of the ability is, it's not really like a cone, it's like a semicircle out in front of her. It's hard to kind of describe, but it's not that long of a range, but it's a really wide ability, so she can kind of dance around people and apply this to a lot of people who are in front of her. The last part, I'm not sure exactly how that works. So let's say you're Daji and a Scylla is chasing you. If you use this ability and the Scylla hits you with her root, then you'll take less damage. But I don't know how it works. Like, if a Scylla 2s you and the 2 is placed like mostly in front of you and you run into it and you get hit by it, but the Scylla is to your back, I don't know if that actually like will mitigate the damage. According to the tooltip, it should. But that's something to keep in mind and something to test, because that's a pretty interesting interaction. And I don't think there's anything quite like that in the game so far. Her 3 Spirit Link, Daji selects a single allied or enemy target. Allied is pretty interesting. And upon arriving at the target, she lashes out with her claws, dealing damage and applying the bleed from Torture Blade. So once again, much like her 2 and her 1, or I guess not her 1, but her 1 is an auto attack, so we'll do anyways. Basically, all of her abilities in her 1 through 3 will also apply her passive. The reason I said it's interesting that it works for allied ability or allied targets is that this is basically like a shadow step or a teleport behind enemy or whatever, and it's basically her escape. And I think it has a longer range than most leaps in the game. But because you have to target something, you can't just do it for like general mobility, jumping over walls to like get away. Like, you have to rely on your team to get you out, which is a pretty fun mechanic to play with, especially in like ranked or competitive games. And then obviously the synergy I was saying with her 1 is that you can activate her 1 and then 3 to an enemy god, and then they'll take the 3 damage and they'll take the melee damage plus your passive plus the horrible burn, so you have a pretty cool combo right there. And then her alt is I'm not going to read all of this, it'll be easier to just explain it. So she basically goes up in the air and stands on top of this pillar, and while she's on top of the pillar, she's not targetable, so she can't take damage or anything like that. But if you were hit by a dot and then you go up on the pillar, you'll obviously take the remaining dot damage. But anyways, when she's up on this pillar, she gets 3 shots similar to a Rama alt, except the radius stays the same for all of the shots, and for every enemy you hit, it'll apply a chain to them with those shots. And at the end of the shots, at the end of the alt, it'll pull anyone who is chained to the pillar, and then you can land and your team can follow up and do all this stuff. It has a pretty good range. I'm not sure what the exact range is, but like, if you were to alt in the center of like a fire giant pit, you should be able to chain people who are like on either side of the speed buff. Like, or not in the speed buff, but like on that speed wall that leads into Fire Giant. That's about the radius. I don't know if I did a good job describing that. The other interesting thing about this is that if somebody is like in a CC immune alt or they beads, if you hit them while that effect is active, normally if you like, say you Ares alt somebody who just popped their beads, like they pop their beads, then you Ares alt them, they'll get pulled to you. With this ability, if they pop their beads and then you hit them with a chain while the beads are still active, it will not pull them, no matter how many times you hit them or what your timing is like. If you hit somebody who is CC immune at any point during this alt, they will not be pulled no matter what, so that's a pretty interesting mechanic. And then also, when the alt is done and she's pulling enemies towards the pillar, she gets to jump down like anyway, kind of like a Jingwei alt. You can land a certain distance away from the pillar. So pretty interesting kit. Definitely hop on the PTS or on live when patch hits and test out that god. That took a while to go over the new god, so we're going to skip past all of these skins and emotes, all pretty stuff, cool, blah blah blah. Gameplay and balance changes. So I mentioned in the 4.8 patch notes that the experience changes that they were testing out on PTS were not going to be live until patch 4.9, and here we are in patch 4.9, and they have decided to go through with these changes. So your level 1 to level 2 experience needed to level up is decreased, but level 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 have been increased. Give me 1 second. I gotta get some water. Excuse me. So basically from level 1 to level 4 is about the same amount of experience, but from level 1 to level 2 is quicker. Which means if you're in dual lane and you two-way split a full wave, then off of the first wave you will hit level 2. This means that if you draft better wave clear and you hit level 2 before them, and you CC them into the remainder of your wave, or you just have two abilities that are off cooldown when they have no abilities off cooldown, you should be able to go for kill plays pretty easy. And then a lot of people have been picking up Sunder at level 1 a lot more often, so basically I think you will die in lane a lot more. There's really no telling if this is a good or a bad thing for the game, because we'll have to like theory craft and figure out new starts to play around this, and you know what gods to pick and how to play the lane. You're gonna have to relearn the early game a little bit. I'm pretty skeptical of this change. I'm pretty scared about it, and like I really don't know if this will be a good change for the game or not. But either way, I like that it is a change, because I think it's good to just keep the game fresh, I guess. Even if it's for the worse, we can revert it at any point, right? So why not try it out, see what people think, and move forward. Gold Fury adjustments and Portal Demon adjustments. Basically, they are less rewarding early game. In the case of Portal, I think this is a static gold, so the value of Portal Demon is like, it's worth a tier 1 tower in gold, but instead of getting the map pressure from killing the objective and blah blah blah, you just get a portal to Fire Giant. And then Gold Fury. This one's interesting because in the last patch, it mentioned that the base health of Gold Fury was being increased, like it is right now, but the scaling of the health over time as the game goes on was being decreased. But it doesn't say that in these patch notes, and just the opposite for the actual gold. It was decreased in the early game, but then increased as the game went on to be about the same value in the late game. I don't know if they actually went through with that, and they just didn't write it down, or if Gold Fury is just tankier and rewards you for less than it used to. Either way, I don't think it's a big deal. The point is that early game Gold Furies don't snowball as much, they're harder to kill, and they give you less for killing them. So I like both of these changes a lot, and I don't know what I think about the experience changes yet, but why not try it out? Mark of the Vanguard. Where's the little slider? There we go. Mark of the Vanguard. Reduced passive flat damage reduction from 5 to 4. I actually like that Vanguard got another nerf. It's probably been a bit too strong for too long, but this means that Death Toll will absolutely dominate the solo lane if it wasn't already, which it was, by the way, because you pretty much only play gods with cleave auto attacks, and then you have Death Toll, so you heal a lot more, and you can auto attack trade everybody else, and blah blah blah. So Mark of the Vanguard makes solo laners who bought it a little bit worse. Death Toll will dominate solo lane more, if you are a support and you were starting like Watcher's Boots 1 or Watcher's and Bumba's Mask instead of Lono's Mask, you probably buy Lono's after Boots instead of Mark of the Vanguard because you're a little less tanky. Not an every game thing, because obviously if you're against like an Ares, Anubis, like what else has a lot of dot damage? Like Ares, Anubis, and they have like whatever else, like AMC dots. I don't freaking know. Anyways, like if you're against a lot of dot damage, obviously Mark of the Vanguard is still a very good item. It just got tweaked a little bit. Chronos Pendant, another interesting change. This item is 2,900 gold, gives MP5. I don't know how much. It doesn't really matter when you're to the point of buying this. It was 2,900 gold, 20% CDR, 60 power. It is now 80 power, and then it also had a passive where once every... I don't buy the item, so I don't know how much it is. Like once every 5 seconds, it reduced all of your cooldowns by 1 second. So, for example, if you're on a god with a 90-second ult, you buy Breastplate of Valor with 20% CDR, your ult goes down to 72 seconds cooldown or something like that. If you buy Chronos Pendant, your ult goes down to 72 seconds, same 20%. But when your ult is on cooldown, you get this little tick from the passive that'll keep reducing the cooldown over and over. So your 72-second ult ends up becoming like a 60-ish second ult, something around there. Which means that you can kind of get past the CDR cap. You can build Chronos Pendant plus 20% more CDR, and you have the passive from Chronos Pendant. So all of your abilities go down cooldowns. It sounds like a really good item, and it sounds like that 20 power is a big deal. I'm not a mage player, but in my opinion, this is still a bad item for the most part. If you look at something like Spear of Desolation, it gives the same amount of power. It gives CDR. It gives Penetration, which Chronos Pendant doesn't, and Penetration is an insanely valuable stat. And it's 200 or 300 less gold, right? Because Desolation is 2,600 gold, so... Overall, I think Spear of Desolation does what Chronos Pendant does, but it does it way better, and it's cheaper, and it gives it pen. So I don't think you'll really pick up this item as much. If you're playing like a Hel or an Aphrodite or any healer-based god like that, and cooldowns are really valuable to you and the MP5 matters to you, then Chronos Pendant obviously is a lot better. But in terms of Conquest, Burst is normally more valuable than cooldown by a good bit. So I don't think you'll see this item picked up all that much more, though I could be completely wrong, and maybe it's a staple in every mage build. Who knows? I'm a freaking support player. I don't use my brain like that. Emerald Mail. This is the tier 2 of Gauntlet of Thebes, Shield of Regrowth, and Mail of Renewal. The health on this item was increased from 200 to 250, so tier 2 is just a little bit better. Gauntlet of Thebes nerfed from 400 health to 350 health. Again, just like a 50 health adjustment, but Emerald Mail was just like a power spike adjustment. This one is like an actual nerf to the item. So to go over this, I think it's good that they nerfed the aura build for supports a little bit. Gauntlet of Thebes was the most picked up item for supports of those auras because it applied both magical and physical protections on the aura. I don't know. I don't really think this is going to stop the item from being built. You probably still build it every game. There's been an ongoing discussion of kind of changing around the auras and making it so that supports have more build variety and all that stuff, but I really don't agree with that at all. I think that keeping the aura items as is and kind of having them be the staple for supports is a lot better. I didn't really like the feel of Season 3 builds where you would just go like Spirit Robe or Breastplate of Valor or Wingblade after your boots, and you basically just felt like a soul laner with less farm and less levels, and it felt really boring to me. I'd rather have just building aura items and being like a utility player for my team and giving them a lot of auras and stuff like that. Something like Shogun's Kasari is the perfect example. There are some other tweaks they could do, and I'm glad they're adjusting them, but I don't want to see them go too overboard with nerfing Thebes and Sav and Heartward and all that stuff. Stone of Fall, this is going to be a no for me right here, dog. This is a great counter item for dealing with high burst. That's just going to be a no for me. If you want to counter high burst, you just buy Bulwark of Hope or Pestilence or Heartward or anything that's way more cost efficient, or like fucking Mantle of Discord is way better. They reduced the cost down to 2,700. In my opinion, this item is still bad. I know that it gives like cooldown reduction or CCR or whatever else it has on it, but For the most part, not breastplate, Bulwark of Hope is cheaper, and it also gives crowd control reduction, and it has a passive that gives you a shield at 30% health. Like, that's considered a luxury magic defense item, and on average, that'll probably mitigate more damage than the Stone of Fall, unless you're getting Thought-Alted off cooldown and it's one-shotting you, and that's the only way you possibly lose the game. Like, maybe you buy this, but that situation is so rare, and there's other better ways to play around that. I still don't think you, like, really ever pick up this item. It's still bad in my opinion. Thousandfold Blade. This is the tier 2 of Masamune, Heartseeker, and what's the other one? Stonecutting Sword. And basically same with the Emerald Mail. It just gets a tier 2 item, power adjustment, 5 more power. This is the most interesting item change, is Shifter Shield in my opinion. This item hasn't been touched for like 3 years. Like, Season 1 was the last time this item was built a lot. So the passive of this item is when you are above 50% health, you gain bonus power. And when you're below 50% health, you gain bonus prot. So what they did is they adjusted the values of those numbers. So the item has physical power, physical protection, magical protection, plus the passive. So the base stat on the item was 40 physical power. That's been moved to 35. The base magical and physical protection on the item were 20 each, and that has been moved to 15 each. So you have 5 less power and prot on the base item, but when you're above 50% health, you gain 15 more power than you used to. So it's minus 5 power and then plus 15 if you're above 50% health. So if you're above 50% health, you gain 10 more power. So that's from 60 to 70. 70 power is a ton. Shifter Shield is like 2,400 gold. Something like Bloodforge is 2,800 gold, and it gives you 75 power. So 400 gold for 5 power is really cost efficient or whatever. So, or whatever, what the heck am I saying? Basically, it's a really good item for a lot of power cheap. And then if you're below 50% health, the stats went from a total of 40 protections each up to 50 protections each, because 15 plus 35. This puts it in line with kind of like a 6-stack Hide of the Urchin, like something around there, or maybe like a 5-stack Hide of the Urchin. So really cost efficient item. If you don't really need the full effect of kind of like a Void Shield all the time, and you can afford to take advantage of a passive like Shifter Shield when you're above or below a threshold, or if you're like a Hercules and you're constantly bouncing between above and below 50% because of your 3 or whatever else, this could be a really, really strong item. Should definitely test it out. These are huge changes, and 70 power for 2,400 gold is a fuck ton of power, so definitely take a look at that. God changes. Chronos, Shifter of Seasons. This is his 1. I don't know why I can't adjust the page correctly. Decrease the physical power scaling on his Summer Heat from 20% to 10%. This is his yellow stance, so basically he gains less bonus auto attack damage, which is very nice because he was chunking way too hard and doing way too much damage. Bramble Blast. This is his 2 ability, the Root. Increase the cooldown by 2 seconds, so he has a little bit less CC. Overall, good adjustments to Chronos to see him nerfed a little bit. He was very, very strong. Chang'e, Moonlit Waltz. I don't know why I can't control my freaking cursor. Increase cooldowns from 20 to 12 seconds to 20 to 14 seconds. So at max rank, your immunity ability has a 2-second longer cooldown. And then for Moonflower Dance, this is her 3 or her heal. 2-second longer cooldown at all ranks. So basically Chang'e heals a little bit less and she has less immunity, which means she's easier to get caught out. I think Chang'e was already on her way out of the meta in Conquest, and now with these changes, she'll probably be hurt even more. I don't think you'll see her played as much, but she's still a good god, or goddess I should say, and she still has really good items in the game for her. Stuff like Lotus Crown or Shield of Regrowth and all that stuff are still very potent. Liang Shen, this is a pretty cool change. They adjusted his base stats, so his base power goes from 38 to 39, which means his auto attacks at level 1 deal 1 more damage apiece. That sounds kind of troll, but like when you adjust base stats of a god, as they level up and scale through the game, you can really notice it. For example, the attack speed per level increased from 0.8 to 0.1. Even though it's only a change of 0.2, because that applies 20 times for 20 levels, it's actually a really big change, and this could make Erlang get played a little bit more in Soul Lane. as I mentioned with the Mark of the Vanguard nerf, because everyone's going to be running Death Toll and basically gods with cleave autos, Liang Shen does both of those, so you might see him played a little bit more. And then as he goes later in the game, he'll be able to do a lot more damage with his Mink form and his 1 activated, because he'll have more attack speed and he can apply his 1 more often. So pretty big change to Erlang, actually. It makes him more of an auto attack based warrior rather than like this style where he could just be a bruiser and just like throw out 2s for poke and all that other stuff. Guan Yu, warriors will increase physical power scaling from 50 to 60%, so his dash does more damage if you build power. And then Talu Assault, increased duration of protection steal from 3 seconds all the way up to 5 seconds. This is a huge change. This makes Guan really good at shredding enemy tanks, and it also makes him much tankier because he gets those procs for longer. Basically, these changes incentivize Guan to go from kind of this middle of the fight role where he would like kind of turtle around his team and just heal them and sit back for a bit, and then he would go in and like go on his horse and then go back and just become a heal bot kind of. This makes him really want to be up front and like in your face. He'll do more damage with his dash, and he'll have more procs, and he'll steal more procs so he can frontline a little bit better. I don't know if this makes Guan really viable, but Guan has pretty good level 1 clear, and with the experience changes making it so that you'll hit level 2 after you clear a wave. If he can 3-2 before the enemy clears a wave, Guan can deal a ton of damage in lane, whether he's a jungler, support, soul laner, or whatever. So definitely keep an eye out for Guan, and if you are a soul laner or a jungler and you're building power on him, his dash will start chunking really hard. Hades has been freaking farming ranked and casual, so he gets some adjustments. His dash cooldown is 2 seconds longer. His Shroud of Darkness, this is his fear, is 1 second shorter at all ranks to kind of make up for the dash cooldown, and then decrease the magical power scaling on the detonate heal from 15 to 10%. This means he will heal creeps for less in the early game. It also means that he will heal his teammates for less as the game goes on, so he doesn't sustain as much for both himself and his teammates. I really like these adjustments to Hades because he was farming in ranked, and I'm tired of seeing him get picked. Kind of trolling. Hades is probably still good, and he's a decent counter pick. They're just toning him down a little bit because he was stomping casuals too hard. Speaking of stomping casuals, Odin used to do that a lot, but instead he's trash now. So they're going to buff Gungear's Might, increase the base damage from 35 to 95, all the way up to 45 to 125. This means this ability won't hit like a wet paper towel. Let's move up. Oh, and also the second hit of this slowing is actually a really big deal. This means you can refresh your slow if you hit them twice. And it also means if you, like, if there's enemies who are just outside of the range of your 3 on either side, you can, like, move a little bit closer to the left and hit them with the first one, and then run back to the right and hit the other person with the second hit, and they'll both be slowed instead of only one of them being slowed. So, decent quality of life change for Odin. And then Susanoo, this god is really annoying to play against and did too much damage. So they reduce the Typhoon's Vortex Strength from 115 to 88, which means it won't hold you in the center of it like a freaking Poseidon Whirlpool plus Gem of Isolation for free. And then reduce the strength and the movement speed penalty of targets, blah, 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 basically what I just said. Both these changes allow players to have faster movement and help them escape quicker from the pool of Typhoon. Susanoo still does a ton of damage, and oftentimes this would be a long-range ultimate that's used to knock up, so though his ult is weaker, he is still very strong, and his ult is still really good. That's the end of the patch notes. I hope you guys enjoyed them. Like I said, it was going to be longer because it was a pretty big patch. It was like 20 minutes, but whatever. If you listen to me rant through all of that, you have much more patience than I do, and I appreciate you for it, and I hope you guys have a good day. Follow my Twitch and my Twitter, blah, 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 and I will see you next time.